Welcome to Platos Cave on Revolution Radio for Revolution.radio, coming to you from Australia. Not some crazy other place beyond the ice wall. No. We are still on this side of reality. Home to ideas, which are good. Ideas are good, mostly. Some ideas are bad. But you know what? The station is a good idea. And donating to the station, that's another good idea. That's two good ideas already in the space of 10 seconds. That's pretty good. So if you can donate, please do. No one else does. No government, no NGO, nobody else but you, the listener. So if you can donate, please go ahead and do so. There's no ads, as you might notice. Not a single ad, except for the station's own shows, of course. But if you can't donate, that's okay. Tell people about the station. That's good too. The more listeners, the more donators, the more donations. One would think. Today is the 17th of June, 2025. 2025! Where's my flying car already? I mean, seriously. Flying car? Hello? No flying car, but they're working on it. I've seen a few prototypes. Look pretty good. I'm probably too big to fly one, but nonetheless. You can catch the cave on the air, on the line all the time, and on your smart device, so grab an app to listen anywhere, or listen in the comfort of your home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. That's pretty good. Another good reason to donate and tell people about the station is the fact that the archives are free. Completely. Just go in there and enjoy anything at all, really. Any content that's there is yours to peruse at your pleasure. It's awesome. Before we start broadcasting at Unanga, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we broadcast, and from Mr. Dunger.
It is the Darkinjung.
Of course it is. And for myself, of course, the Daruk people. And we like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Now that the formalities are over, let's get right into it. Again, thank you so much for perusing our shorts. I really appreciate it. Dave appreciates it. And the reason we're doing it is so hopefully we can reach a wider audience. And I've noticed there's a slight uptick on our longer form videos as well, which is great. It's great. So I really want to thank everybody who's taken the time to check out our content.
Thanks for the great
on whatever
response.
Platform. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what happened. A lot of comments too. Especially the shorts, they're garnering a lot of comments, which I think is fantastic. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much.
Talk to a few of those points a bit later on.
For sure. Because look, ultimately, Dave and I do this because, well, yeah, it's fun. Sure it is. And it sort of gives us an outlet as well, which is great. So, Nighthawk, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. But most of all, the information that we have, right? I didn't come across in school, right? I didn't come across in my work life, if you will. This is all stuff that I came across in my private endeavors, my own reading, my own traveling, in fact, right? And talking to people and other things, visiting conferences and consuming alternative content. And it's nice to be able to share some of this, right? I mean, do you have to believe everything we say? Well, you should believe nothing of what we say, right? I mean, if it strikes a chord with you, great. If it strikes a chord and you think, maybe I want to find out for myself what it is that those guys are talking about, right? It's up to you to figure out whether or not we're telling the truth. I'm a little bit worried these days around the pervasiveness of false information. Mm-hmm. Completely made up stuff and outright red-faced lies. It's like this. But back in the old days, at least people had the decency to lie about something that could conceivably be hidden. Like if you lie, you found out immediately. What's the point of the lie? It just makes no sense at all, right? But no, I am worried about government influence on certain whistleblowers. I'm worried about the government or the three-letter agencies, or worse yet, the parasitic overlords that we have. And they are overlords in many ways. Doesn't mean it's a good thing. Overlords aren't a good thing. The qualifier parasitic should really give it away. They seem to be driving the narrative in a certain direction, which is understandable. That's what they do. That's their game. And we have a lot of misinformation out there at the moment, right? You listen to some of the whistleblowers, you listen to some of the testimony of some of the witnesses, some of the government agency officials, some soldiers that come out and through. And I want to remember one thing, because it's important to remember this. Look at what happens to real whistleblowers. Okay, people that reveal state secrets in a way that wasn't sanctioned. Yeah. Again, you look at Assange. He didn't even get the material himself. He just published it, right? But you don't have to go to Assange. You look at, in Australia, there was a whistleblower in the army. He was a lawyer, and he had to come forward with the information that he found, right? Horrendous stuff, but he got punished for it. Okay, true whistleblowers, actual whistleblowers, are usually punished by the powers that be, because they reveal information that the powers that be don't want to be revealed. So information that we do get from other sources where the whistleblower is not punished, right, and in fact seemingly encouraged or even supported by the government, you got to ask yourself, really? Yeah. So I'm somewhat skeptical. I mean, I'm sure there's truth in what these people are saying. I'm sure there is, right? I'm sure there's truth. But is the truth enough? Right? I mean, how much of it is lie, and then how much of the lie carries through to push you in a certain direction? So you got a kernel of truth here. You might even know that this part here is absolutely true because you just know this, right? On your own, you just have this knowledge. And then you go, okay, well, but this part over here, well, if that is true, then maybe that is true as well, but maybe it isn't. So all I'm saying is be cautious what you believe and whom you believe. Okay? I don't know, Dave. Well, what's your take on that?
Right there. Well, I'm going to start immediately by saying, just remember Project Mockingbird. That was a FBI CIA joint project to create disinformation and misinformation in certain circles to, like moths to a flame, Meki, people will flock around new information, and regardless if it's the truth or a lie, it does take some discerning effort to be able to find where the truth is. Now, having said that, I know how challenging that can be if you are being either gaslit because you don't know what the truth is yet, or you've been astroturfed. So astroturfed is, it doesn't matter where you look to try and find the truth, you just keep coming across the same information, which looks like it verifies that it really exists, but it doesn't, and never did. So it's the little tiny nuggets of truth that you'll find somewhere which will lead you down the right path, rather than if you have, let's say, all conspiracy theorists were in one big group. They're not, but if they were, then all you have to do is throw in some untruths which seem remarkable. Oh, how good is that? And then you'll start to divide that group into believers and non-believers. Now you've just separated your enemy into two. It's very important. Sun Tzu, Meki, right? So that if you did keep doing that enough, you'll have a weapon that you can use against them. They don't know that they're holding that weapon. And there was a senator in US politics who decided that if you have let's call it a 70-30 majority in the Senate, how do you control the 70 and how do you control the 30 so that you can get your bill across? So it doesn't matter if it's 50-50, it's irrelevant. All you do is what this person did is they split them up into, I think, 70 different groups. And then they had to control only one person in each group, not the 100 people. That's really, really clever. So, saying that, a video has come out, been released, and this is, it's not a hot topic, it's very sad, and it's one of the Epstein claimants. And this is Virginia Guffrey's dead man switch activated. And today you can't believe anything you see or hear, but if I put the middle screen on, this is the video. You can search for it by title. You can see it, and if I play just
automatically after I miss 2 scheduled,
how it's animated, and it does definitely sound like her. I'm not sure if I can compare it against any other cadence that I have for her, but if this is a psyop, it's good. It's not her talking to camera, so that means, it could be an AI voice. Meki, remember when the AI voice thing came around and I gave it the intro to our show, trained it on my voice, and it just sounded like me reading it perfectly, which, of course, if anyone knows me, I don't read perfectly. And it didn't have the cadence that would be required to play my voice. Now I'm doing a Newsom. I'm doing a sway like Newsom. And I haven't had any drugs, by the way. Unlike
that's good to know.
Yeah, just saying. So look, that's this story that came out made me question the very essence of the story. Now I have to go back and listen to all of her prior interviews, anything she was public on, and then listen to see if that cadence is the same. So it's a tragedy that she's no longer with us. But if you ask, Meki, if you ask any top echelon person who's got some claim out against them and their only witness is no longer alive, they're a happy person. I remember the Bill Gates interview. Well, he's dead. That's all he said. So we won't be the extension of that sentence would have been in his head. Oh, well, I don't have to worry about that anymore because Epstein's now no longer with us. So if my only accuser is no longer alive, then I'm happy. Isn't that awful? I just think it's so awful.
Well,
because in our law system, the person who's making the complaint must be, put in a stand, must be cross-examined. That information then needs to be sifted through for what's truth, what isn't truth, and a determination made by a group of your peers. That's the way it's supposed to work. But if the claimant is no longer alive, there's no case.
Yeah.
So this is what disturbs me greatly, Meki. And look, I think it falls in line with what you were talking about.
Look, I agree. And look, again, Dave is quite right when he says you can't really believe anything you see or hear anymore online. If you see it with your own eyes, there's a certain level of confidence you can take in that.
I kind of trust my own eyes. Yeah,
if you can. Well, the thing is this, and I don't mean to be facetious,
you're
right?
going down the hologram path.
I'm going somewhere. But think about it for a second here, right? So we did just have a show on mind control, right? And we did have many shows on the holographic universe. We had a whole bunch of show cycles around reality, ontology, and what it means to be, right? So, funnily enough, best testing, best scientific formulations tell us that we are most likely living in a simulation. Most likely.
Mm-hmm.
There was this thing I saw recently, and I'm sure you saw it as well, where I think some people took DMT. I think it was DMT.
Oh, and stare at the laser on the wall? Yeah.
It was a refracted laser, right? And where two lasers, I think it was two refracted lasers, and they were intersecting.
That's right.
And where they were intersecting, but only if you're on DMT, right? I think it was DMT. And you look into the light, apparently what you see is another room. And not only another room, but you also see Matrix-like code.
That's right.
Running up and down the thing. So now, I have never taken DMT. I don't have a refracted laser. But it certainly is interesting. I mean, you have to ask yourself...
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, you don't have to ask yourself. We know for a fact that we only see a fraction of the reality that actually exists around us. We know that. When I say see, I really mean perceive. We only perceive a fraction, right? Our visual acuity is very low. Our visual range is tiny compared to the entire spectrum. Same goes for our auditory system. Touch and feel is okay, but our temperature range is extremely limited. Your body, this is true, your body can't tell the difference between really, really hot and really, really cold.
That's right.
You can't tell the difference. It's the same. You will, if it's sufficiently hot or sufficiently cold, your nerves are just going to burn out. They're going to short circuit pretty much, right? So there's a lot of the world we don't perceive at all. And one of the most amazing or most persuasive things I've ever seen recorded by the Skinwalker Ranch people was when they had a camera with a shutter speed of, I don't know, it's like 100,000 a second or a million pictures, whatever it was. Like, it was an incredible shutter speed, right? Super slow motion. And they were doing something, and they were just taking pictures of the sky at the time with people in frame. Though there's still people in frame, which literally were statues. Nothing happened in their world, right? And I'll give you a simple example after this. What I mean by that, and I want to talk about Jose Escamilla just for a second after that as well. So, but what essentially what they saw is, as they had this shutter speed going at this enormous rate. Mm-hmm. There was this UFO that was pretty much moving across the sky, right? Now, the distance it moved would have been less than the blink of an eye, okay? So it literally traveled, kilometers in fractions of seconds. And it was complete. It would have been missed completely by anyone looking at it because our frame rate, our eyes refresh rate, just isn't fast enough. So anything that moves very, very, very fast, you simply cannot see. Let me give you an example how this applies to us. Compared to a tree, an oak tree, that grows in the same place for maybe 1,000 years, maybe longer. When we're running around like crazy freaks, very fast, the tree would not perceive us in the same way as it would perceive its fellow trees. It might only perceive us as minute disturbances, if at all, in its life cycle, right? Unless we chop it down, in which case there's a fairly significant impact, of course. Other than that, we have, it would never really perceive us. We are outside the range of its ability to perceive us, And if you slow it down sufficiently, let's say the tree had eyes, for argument's sake, its frame rate would probably be a lot lower than our frame rate, and we would be zipping about and in fact, probably so fast that we couldn't be seen. So, as Jose Escamilla came on our show twice for two different things, but mostly for the Clementine mission of the moon photographs, which he turned into a couple of documentaries, which you should watch if you can. It's just phenomenal stuff. It really is. It's phenomenal. I wouldn't say it's life-altering, but it's close. He discovered rods. Now, rods are apparently these creatures that move faster than we can see. A lot of scientists have said, they're just insects, this and that, and he was very diligent. He made a lot of recordings, and of course he's passed away now, rest in peace, and he can't defend himself anymore, so people just say, no, it's just misidentified insects or something, or flapping of moths. It was not that. And we went through it in some detail. He went through it with us, right, in some detail. So whatever these things are, they're not just flapping insects. These are things. And he wasn't the only one that actually captured them either, right? But they move faster than we can see. So I submit here there's a world out there moving so fast that we can't actually see. And when we do see a UFO or any phenomenon of this nature, I think it's an accident, right? Or whatever the phenomenon is, wants to be seen, okay? Or it doesn't care if we see it. Right, so there are a number of different options here, but I think for the most part, I think there's a whole world around us we just simply cannot perceive. Okay, that goes both from the electromagnetic to the auditory spectrum, and again, bear in mind we only have auditory spectrum here on the planet Earth because there's an atmosphere. You don't have an atmosphere, there's no sound. Okay, that's just very simple. Whereas, of course, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is radiation essentially, can exist without an atmosphere. We can perceive it anywhere. But ultimately, we have to be very careful as to what it is that we can and cannot perceive. And I think we should change our our mind about thinking that certain things are impossible. I don't think they're impossible. I just think we haven't seen them yet. I don't think we have perceived them yet. And now with this technology that we have, I mean, super slow motion and things like that, we are starting to see these things. All right, even when they move at their natural speed, we can capture them, and I think that's a phenomenal advancement. Okay, so I think there's a whole world out there, and it might even be slightly out of phase with ours. It might be vibrating on a slightly different frequency. I mean, maybe these I don't know, others have a technology that allows them to shift out of our common frequency. And you know, again, Dave, you know where my mind is going here. You know, around the Star Trek episode with Janeway, where they are visited by people just slightly out of phase. Yeah, now they get headaches and all kinds of things. And then when you look at the phased aliens, you got these huge apparatus hanging off their heads and drilling into their head and all kinds of things, right? But completely imperceptible to the crew of the Voyager because it is outside their range of perception, completely, right? So I think the most important thing that we can acknowledge is that our knowledge is very, very limited. And we should acknowledge this and not insist that we know all the answers and then make fun of people who think slightly differently. Make fun of people who are willing to push the envelope, even if it means ridicule. I mean, Lloyd Pye, Jose Escamilla, Mars, Graham Hancock, Eric Von Däniken, Charles Berlitz, Evan Sanderson, right? And there are many more, and I do apologize that I can't list them all here. But these are all people that pushed the envelope, and in some cases still pushing the envelope, right? And I find it both offensive and short-sighted to make light of these people and make fun of them and disregard what they've discovered. Anyway, that's what I think.
Well, that's good. In the meantime, Eki, while you were talking, I was displaying some VEO3 videos. All
cool.
of these are entirely manufactured. There isn't a single pixel that is real in those videos.
Wow.
Wow. It is truly amazing that it's imperceivable now. We can't tell. Watching, Kev, the Bigfoot with the Australian guy. That's a lot of fun. There's an American one, exactly the same, but he has a Yeti friend, and they find human things and then play with them. It's just really funny. But it's not real. So if we were shown something that was not fictitious, let's say, although I do believe in Bigfoot existing, but if there was something that was truly believable in our realm with normal everyday items, we would not be able to tell the difference. Because our brain has a filter for myth and fantasy. So if someone showed us a film of a dragon flying, that would, I'd be very interested. If they show us a UFO landing and aliens getting out on the news, is that real? Possibly not. Possibly not. Just like the H.G. Wells, was it H.G. Wells? Yeah, it was. H.G. Wells, a radio play that had people panicking beyond
Orson Welles.
Or Orson Welles. I knew there was a Welles in there. So had people panicking beyond their reality. They were incapable of processing that there's alien ships. But it was a radio play. That's all it was. And in our sense today, if it was, it could be anything. Let's say it was aliens land on a White House lawn. That's all we have to say. Or if they do a live shot of missiles coming down to an American city and there's a cloud, a nuclear cloud, and then they turn the power off, what would you think? You would in your reality, the thing that you've just consumed would say that there was a nuclear strike and America's lost. You would believe it. 100% you believe it, because there was a physical thing that occurred with it. That was the turning the power off. And then no way of you to prove that it didn't happen. if there was footage on the news that went global of alien ships or what, it doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't actually matter what it is. Whatever it would be, it could be perceived as being completely real. I swear, if you woke up and you had a pair of VR goggles on and somehow a brain implant that allowed you to move about, but you were in a soup, you would believe you were there in this computer-generated world. You would believe it, and that's all I can say. So, if we were looking at an orchestrated, I'll call it a psyop, an orchestrated psyop in any context whatsoever. With the current technology, we wouldn't be able to tell it was happening. In the past, it's usually taken a decade or two for us to work out what was really going on. Of course, we've been able to do that in the past, and then eventually the government will cave and say, yeah, the Gulf of Tonkin, yeah, that was a black flag. So, here's a good question. Is the Nimitz going to Iran, Israel waters just begging for a false flag to occur?
You see. Now we're
what I'm
talking,
doing?
right?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm with you. I had a few conversations. Actually, I went into work today, and we're talking about this. One lady, she actually is from Iran, and she had to flee because she's of the Baha'i faith.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to run away some years ago, and we just discussed a few things. And eventually we came to talking about these things, right? And I've heard this elsewhere now as well. If the fleets or the carrier fleets are there near
Mm-hmm.
in the Gulf or even in the Mediterranean or wherever they might be, Black Sea, who knows, right? Is it then reasonable to assume that we could be looking at a false flag operation if they're attacked? The answer is yes, and I'll tell you why. And I know this is going to go very deep into the rabbit hole, and if you don't like to follow that, it's okay, but we've spoken about this before. So let's just take a step back. The sinking of the Lusitania, right, was not a German aggressive act. The Gulf of Tonkin incident, was an excuse to get into the Vietnam War. The attack on Pearl Harbor.
I want to go to the radio station next.
You do the radio station, my friend. But the attack on Pearl Harbor, in my opinion, and not just my opinion, but the attack on Pearl Harbor was while not arranged by the U.S., certainly allowed to happen by the U.S., in my opinion, in order to get the American public interested in the war, because the American public had exactly zero interest in World War II.
That's right.
Tell us about the radio station, my friend.
Well, the radio station at the beginning of World War II was falsified. They weren't, was it meant to be Polish separatists or something that had stormed the radio station with stolen military wear? Right? Am I on the money? Is that right? Is that what happened?
You're on the money, brother.
There you go.
You're on the money, brother. That's what happened.
And then it's not my area of expertise, but I'll tell you.
No, you're right.
But that
100%.
once again, and then you could also claim in the future, maybe we'll find out. I don't know. But the Gazans, the Palestinians crossing the border into Israel, I saw the footage. There was no guards on that border. So it's only a question. Was that an organised, say, Pearl Harbor-esque, that the government knew that they were coming, but they did nothing?
See, now, and we talked about this as well, interestingly at work, and you, let me unpack this just a little bit. 9/11, in my opinion, was absolutely allowed to happen. At the very best scenario, it was allowed to happen. Best scenario, in my opinion. Too many things stacked up, and too many things happened during the day as well that just don't make any sense. Building 7 being the most glaring one of them. But October. Let's talk about October for a second here. We're talking about probably the most impressive intelligence apparatus in the world. Most of the security software for the world, including cyber encryption, etc., comes out of Israel. That's right. So Israel is extremely skilled in any kind of intelligence gathering operations, etc., etc. They have to be. They're surrounded by enemies. That's the truth. It's the truth. They're surrounded by enemy nations. And a lot of those enemy nations have as the declared goal the destruction of the Israeli state. That is absolutely true. Okay? That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a fact. So, of course, you're paranoid. Of course, you try your best to defend yourself. Of course you do, right? Makes sense. To have such an abject failure of the entire intelligence apparatus in Israel that would allow the attack that occurred in October, which led to the death of some 1,200 Israelis, as well as the kidnapping of, I think it was close to 1,000, I think, hostages, maybe more. Completely unthinkable, in my opinion. It is equal to the failure or the failures that occurred on September 11, 2001. Equal to, at the very least. Maybe worse in many ways. So, because this is where the hate starts. Oh, you're such an anti-Semite. Well, no, I'm not. My great-grandparents were Jewish, so yeah, not really. And my grandparents almost ended up in Auschwitz. So let's put the anti-Semitism thing aside. Let's park it over here, okay? Because I'm not. But I'm also not a blind supporter of Israel. Okay, and being a critic of Israel does not mean you're an anti-Semite. It just doesn't. Okay, Israel is a political state entity. Yes, largely Jewish in population, but doesn't mean I hate the Jewish people. I just don't agree with the administration of Israel right now. You know, the cabinet, the government. I don't like them. But it's unthinkable for most people. It's unthinkable to even entertain the thought that the government would be willing to kill its own citizens for political gain, because that's what this is. Or you could argue, I mean, you could, in the best case scenario, let's stay with me for a second. Let's say it happened with the blessing of the Israeli government, not the people, the government, the attacks. What you could argue is that they felt it was necessary to provoke the attacks in order to initiate all the things we've now seen unfold, right? The depopulation of Gaza, the destruction and severe, I guess, I think it's we've pretty much destroyed them. The severe disabling and destruction of Hamas and Hezbollah, certainly, right, as well as the Houthis in Yemen. So that actually all happened, and Netanyahu did all these things, right? He gutted Hezbollah, he's gutted Hamas. He's taken care of the Houthis. Syria took care of itself, so that sort of fell by the wayside. So the only thing left is Iran. Now, he would argue, if it ever came out that this was true, he would argue, well, I did it for the good of the Israeli people. Yes, we sacrificed 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 Israelis, but that now has guaranteed the future safety of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million Israelis. Right? That's the argument here. It's a completely utilitarian argument. Right? It's like the argument that you have, okay, there's a train coming at you, and it goes two ways. Over here is 10 people, over here is one person, and you can split the train, but you can't stop it. You can split it. You can go over here or you can go over there, right? Left or right. You kill 10 people or you kill one person. Now, most people would choose to kill the one person until more information is revealed. Right, and then the decision becomes harder and harder. But from a purely utilitarian and numbers point of view, it is much better to save the 10 rather than the one person. Right, that's utilitarian, and that's how you would argue. And in my mind, that is exactly where we are, because all of the things that we've seen unfold, and make no mistake, the attack on the both the I think it was the pagers as well as the cell phones, right? Was something that doesn't just happen. That was planned. That would have been planned years in advance. Years in advance. Okay, as well as the other things. I mean, the destruction of Gaza. It's a rubble field now, and they want to push the Palestinians out. They've said this. We're going to take control of Gaza. Thank you very much. And ideally, we'd like all the Gazans out. Thank you very much. That's ethnic cleansing.
Visual impact is
but
less
this is
severe.
this only happened because of the October attacks.
Yeah.
If the October attacks had not happened, then Israel would have had no excuse to do what it did to the extent that it did. There have always been wars and uprisings, intifadas and all that, but never to this extent. Never like this. This is unprecedented. And north of 50,000 civilians have been killed in Gaza. Maybe more, I don't know. And certainly the exchange between Iran and Israel is now, well underway. And this is really the last domino as far as Israel is concerned. They need to get rid of the Ayatollahs regime, or the regime of the Ayatollahs. The extreme Islamist regime, because it is the declared aim of Iran to destroy the state of Israel. Okay, now complicates things because Iranians are not Arabs, right? They're Muslims, yes. So it's really interesting when you when you look at the entire Middle East. It's fascinating. It was my major at uni, but I don't want to go too deeply into it. But let's just say it's very, very complex. And by destroying the regime in Iran, my prediction here is that if that were to happen, and I'm not sure it will, but if that were to happen, we're looking at a much worse scenario than what happened in Iraq. Everybody said, "I'll get rid of Saddam Hussein. Everything is going to be hunky-dory." It led to the birth of ISIS. Mm-hmm. If we get rid of the regime of the Ayatollahs in Iran, whatever's going to grow out of that is going to be 1,000 times worse than ISIS. It's going to be 1,000 times worse.
If you're a Ren and Stimpy fan, it was Ren and then hideously evil Ren.
I like that.
So
yeah,
it was
absolutely.
It was
so,
Ren cloned himself and became Ren and then evil Ren cloned himself, became evil Ren and hideously evil Ren, and had them all tied up.
I love it.
It's very funny. Great episode.
I love it. But to your point, Dave, I do believe that a logical argument could be made that the October attacks were at the very least allowed to happen. Okay,
well,
and that's and I know people will.
It is so much easier to get buy-in from the people if they've got some skin in the game, so to speak.
100%. I know people will rail against it. They go, "Oh, it's not possible. It would never happen." No, absolutely. These politicians make these decisions all day long. Vladimir Putin, probably the worst. Okay, but he's not alone. He's not exceptional in this. He just lost a million young men, Russians. Now, both killed and wounded, mind you. Mm-hmm. 1 million. Yeah. Why? I want the Ukraine. I want the Ukraine.
Bring back the olden days. Look, the concern once again, though, is, and I've seen the same post today talking about, getting rid of the Ayatollahs. I've seen that. I read it. Do I agree? Not really. When Saddam Hussein was in charge of, in some way, shape or form, of the Middle East, it was by an iron fist, if you wish, but it was in more control than it is now. Is there a way of being able to do it without a new uprising or, this continued hatred against everybody else? And I'm saying this one more time, Mackie, and I'm not advocating for world peace because, then I'll get killed. Because, you can't have that. Ask Anwar Sadat, right? So the thing that I think is really important is it's one planet. Why are we fighting so horrendously for little bits of land here and there? And why do we teach children an ideal to the idea of a single country is your enemy? Because that's a great common enemy. If we all have the same enemy, we'll work together to get to somewhere. But usually splinter groups will take that message and run with it and then attempt to take it out because they want to be the people who did the right thing. Now, each one of those lessons has happened over and over again for the last 2,000 years plus. Every one of those lessons. Doesn't matter who you are. So are we doing the right thing by propagating the message? Or are we learning from history? If my best bet came true, if my dream came true, that we would have all learnt from it, and decided that if we work together as a human species, we could go further. That's all I really want. I know it's idealistic. It's completely stupid because look, everyone will tell me, oh, we've tried that and it never works. Historically, it's never going to work. There's always going to be someone in the Native American Indians, the Native Americans of North America, they even had a parable for this. They were talking about there's one hunter who's born and he's better than everybody else, and then at some point in his life he's the most successful hunter, and then he says, well, because I'm the most successful hunter at one point, I should get more food. So I now demand more of the food that I'm hunting, but that means that old blah 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 Mabel can't eat if you're going to eat twice as much. You're no longer sharing. This is all about our group together. And then he bails and goes to live on his own and make his own place, but then only to be uprisen by another person doing the same thing later, where the original group had lived for hundreds of years and always kept that problem under wraps. So which one's better? Which way should we go? And why aren't we teaching these ideas in our schools to our children to be able to make it so that we do harmonize with the rest of the world? Is this a stupid idea? And I'm putting this to the chat. So is this the stupidest idea you've ever heard? Because I'll take criticism. I'm okay with it. Is this the way we should do it, or does this make us weaker in all of our enemies' eyes? And Meki, I'll put it to you. Yeah.
The question becomes, what kind of world do we want to live in? Now, to put it simply, I envision a world. I have a dream. I have a dream.
I don't know.
Where all children have a chance. This is your baseline. This is for me. This is the baseline. All children have a chance at a happy, purposeful, and safe life. Okay, that's my baseline.
That is a dream.
All children. That should be a human right. This baseline. After that, and you start doing this by teaching the children right. Responsibility. You don't have to keep them away from weapons or violence, but you teach them about it. You make them understand what it means. You know what the difference between a gun owner, a responsible gun owner, and some criminal that has a gun? Gun education. I was educated on guns when I was 5, 6 years old. 5 or 6. My grandfather was very strict, but he allowed me to shoot when I was 8. I shot a Smith & Wesson 48.
Oh, wow.
And he had a carbine rifle. Yeah, look. But he wasn't stupid about it, right? And he said to me, if you ever point a gun at a human being, you will have to pull the trigger. So never ever point a gun, loaded or unloaded, at a human being. Never, ever. And I remember this. It's seared into my brain. And then he showed me gun safety. He showed me how to clean it, look after it, the whole shebang, right? And it's a tool. It's like a hammer. It's exactly how it is. It's a hammer, it's a screwdriver, it's a saw, it's a machete, I don't care what, right? And it's how you use it that determines whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. The tool itself doesn't care how you use it. Okay?
That's
and this, so you start, I mean, this is the most extreme thing, but then you start teaching children the proper way about anything. You don't have to keep them away from conflict. You don't have to keep them away from violence, but you have to make them understand. Because when children are very young, they can't really externalize the world. The world is just them. Okay, they're the world. They can't really fully empathize. That brain development, as we know now, comes a bit later. So you guide them along that path until they're ready, right? You don't body shame children. You don't make them feel inferior. You give each child the challenges that are good for that child. You don't force children into a template. Right? You don't do the stupid things that we do today. Right? Look at the rich people, and look at the people in the past, like the kings and queens of the world and their offspring. They all had private tutors. They have private teachers teaching that child at their pace, if you will. up
We could
until
have
a certain
AI
age,
do that
right?
today.
We could, and funnily enough, I can't think of the name now. My favorite, my favorite sci-fi show. It was in fact the Brown Coats, Firefly. In Firefly, that's exactly the model they had. They had an AI teacher. If you remember the movie that finished off the season after some years, but they had AI teachers there. That's correct, and each child was taught according to its level, not making it feel stupid in front of the others. Because what we're doing is we're taking 30 children of every background, every economic, whole spectrum. It doesn't matter if it's private school or public; it's completely irrelevant. But we take them all, and we put them into the same classroom, and we give them all the same test. Now, a smart man, and I can't recall who, once said to me, if you gave an intelligence test to a Kalahari bushman, he would look at you like you're insane, because he would say, "Well, where does it ask me how to find water, and where does it ask me how to start a fire, and where does it ask me how to climb a tree?" If you put a frog and a turtle into the same class, together with a monkey, turtle, frog, monkey, and you test them for swimming. The frog and the turtle are going to do well, and then you ask them to climb a tree. The turtle is not going to do well. The monkey is going to excel. You can't test the turtle against other kids, if you will, kids, by asking the turtle to climb a tree. That's a complete nonsense. The test for the turtle is something else. The test for the monkey, climb a tree. The test for the turtle, eat some salad leaves, whatever the case. But whatever. The point is, but we treat our children as though they're all the same. I mean, slowly I can see some differentiation, but ultimately we can't afford it. Because we've forgotten what society is about, Dave. This goes back to my pet peeve. We've forgotten why we live in a society. We live in a society to help, support, and push each other forward. That's why we live together. But no, the profit motive has taken over, and we now have classrooms that are ridiculously full, underpaid teachers, underpaid staff in general. No proper equipment, certainly in public schools. Private schools, yes, you have some better things, but you still give the children the same tests, and you still teach them all the same stuff, and some of the stuff is completely outdated. But why do we do it? Because it's cheaper. It's too expensive to update it. It's too expensive to individualize the education. Even if you pay $20,000, $40,000 for private school, your child will still not get an individual education, or individual tests. They'll probably pass the test better. Good for you. But we still fail them all, Dave.
I totally understand. I was thinking about that example that I've given before about gun violence. And if I equate gun violence to the oxygen triangle of fuel, heat, and what was the other one? Fuel, heat, and oxygen. Yes. So fuel, heat, and oxygen. And you take any one away and there's no fire. Doesn't matter. The same with gun violence. You have a gun on a person who is in a situation and motive, right? So if you have a situation that you need to solve, your motive to do it will depend on your reasoning ability. If you've been educated to believe that the gun is the solution to every problem, you'll use it. If you have taken away the situation, then you've just got an open carry. That's all you have. If you take away the gun, you just have an angry person in a crowd. If you take away the motive, they won't have any reason to use the gun. So the same triangle works for in both cases, and where through our society, everything we've seen and do, all the game. I'm not going to blame in games, but all the games we play, all the news we see, and possibly an interdimensional group of aliens who are twirling stuff and pointing stuff in our heads, like in Captain Janeway's adventures. If there was any way of being able to fix this, it would be, once again, as we talked about at the top of the show, being able to educate people so that they realize that the solution isn't immediately to use a gun or a knife. That's where we've failed. We've given people the motive to do it, the reason to do it. They're normalized into believing that that is the solution. I don't care. Argue in the chat. I'd like to be able to respond with at least some reason. If you have conflicting opinion, that'd be fantastic. I do look for discussion, and that's one thing we haven't covered yet, Meki. So I want to say Meki's been very prolific and launched a whole bunch of topics, and one was US civil war imminent. Expert weighs in on escalating tensions, and the person says, "Make America great again." Good answer, but I'm not sure that the Civil War will make America great again. I'm not sure, Mackie. Call me a cynic. I think that the amount of energy that people have built up in the let's call it TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, the last 4 years of giving everybody whatever they wished for, like a genie out of the bottle. If you want to be a woman, man, I don't care what you want to do. Whatever you want to do, it's fine. It's all good. You can do that. And now that's kind of taken away and everyone's upset. If that was the reason for it, whose side would you want to be on?
Look,
can't you just wait another 3.5 years and you can get to vote again? Why have a civil war? I know that there's a lot of displeasure in America, and there's a lot of, I mean, really a lot. There's like 2,000 cities, Meki, that had protests going on. So that, to me, it absolutely is escalating tension. But is a civil war imminent? Whose side would you be on? Would you be on the side, the NRA side, or the other side?
It's a good question. I think a civil war is imminent because the differences are too great. That there no longer is common ground for conversation, discussion, debate. The poles have moved too far away from each other. And if you add to that the fact that America has no chance of ever getting out of its debt.
That's right.
Ever.
We talked about that
as well as
ago.
We did. But there are many other factors that play into it as well. But the rift between the opinions in America has become massive. Not only that, the rift between the haves and the have-nots has become massive. Funnily enough, the country is not divided by the haves and the have-nots at all. It's really interesting to see that dynamic. But is this a situation that we faced or that America faced in the 1860s? I don't know. What I do know is if it keeps developing the way it is, and if more fuel is thrown onto the fire, to Dave's point, by militarizing cities and sending the military in when it might not be required, when it comes to blatant lies about certain things, when it comes to incompetence, and I mean the Democrats are just as incompetent as the Republicans here. There are no winners. There's no, in my mind, there is no side to choose here. Okay, one side is slightly more rational than the other, maybe, right? But ultimately, you have to find a third path. There has to be a third way. You can't go this way and you can't go that way. You have to find a new path if you want to survive in America. I firmly believe it.
Your very point here is loud and clear. There should be a middle party that is now
100%.
capable of rising up and being the voice of the truth, honesty, and transparency. If that were possible, I think that would be a great success. Not trying to marry the two together, because that's never going to happen. They're now poles apart, opposite.
But look, I fear for because if the United States sinks into a civil war, it would spell disaster for the rest of the world in the sense that the next world order, and we're seeing it already, but the next world order that is emerging will be completely different to what we used to or have been used to for the last 80 years. We lost the age of empires in World War One, with the death knell in World War Two. The time between the world wars was complete waste of time. There was complete chaos. But if you look at the 19th century, then you look at the middle of the 20th century, two completely different worlds. Completely different. The maps, completely different. Political allegiances, political ideologies. Between 1880 and 1980, it's like 1,000 years had passed in that 100 years. Okay, and we would be looking at something similar, I think. Once the shift, and the shift will happen once the shift completes. It'll be total. It'll be catastrophic for some, but it'll just be something new, right?
Do you know what, Mickey? There's a news story here from the ABC in Australia. It says, with Israel and Iran trading missiles, the global economy looks precarious once again.
Of course.
And there's the music.
Fill up your car if you can. Hey, thank you so much. This has been Platos Cave. We'll be back on Thursday with another edition of Platos Cave. And don't go anywhere. Something else is going to come up that's going to be awesome. If you can donate in the meantime, that'd be awesome. So again, don't go anywhere. But most of all, Dave,
be safe and do fill up your car. That means you watch my video. Love your work, pal.
Of course I do.